Stephen Bedard here. One of my favorite authors, really by far, is J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien's the man. Just such an amazing author. The way he created an entire world, he didn't just tell a story. He created a mythology, and it grabs my imagination every time. So I just love reading anything by Tolkien. However, in recent years, some people have come forward and suggested that maybe Tolkien was a racist in the way that he created that world, that it was inherently racist and reflected the racist attitudes of his time. Was J.R.R. Tolkien a racist? Well, I have no idea. I love reading about Tolkien. I love reading his stuff. I love reading biographies about him. I've never encountered anything that suggested he was particularly racist. I am sure that he was affected by the racist attitudes of that time. When I think about, for myself, growing up in the 1970s, that there was a lot of racism in the air there. So I'm sure that Tolkien was affected by that. And that he did not necessarily have the attitudes that we have in the 2020s. So we can't really put those standards back to someone. Everyone living at that time really fell short of what we would expect today. But my question is the world of Middle-earth, the mythology of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, is it inherently racist? Well, you can see where they would get that idea, because it seems to suggest that there are good races and bad races. Good races would be the elves and the humans and the hobbits. And then you have bad races, which would be the orcs, which is the most obvious one, but trolls as well, and the wargs and so on. When we watch Lord of the Rings, or when we read the stories and we hear about orcs getting their heads chopped off, we don't grieve there. We don't think, oh, I wonder, is there a family behind that orc that's going to be mourning the loss? What about this orc's friends in his regiment and so on? We don't think about that. We think of it as an inhuman thing that deserves death. And so some people would look at that and suggest, well, maybe that reflects some of the views that were around that saw certain people as less human than others. And since Tolkien saw good races and bad races, that is reflecting those racist attitudes. Now, I just want to throw out some thoughts here just to keep the conversation going. One is that his view of races in his world of Middle-earth is a lot more complicated. It's not as simple as that there are good races and bad races. And there's a couple of things that we can talk about here. First of all, he sees these races as being very much connected. So orcs are not just created as orcs. They are actually originally elves. The orcs are elves that have been corrupted and changed. And so in one way, the orcs are the same race as the elves. Something has happened to them. They have been corrupted. They have been changed. But they come from the same origin. They would have a common ancestor at some point. So that makes it more complicated. The same thing with trolls. Trolls and ents. Trolls are corrupted ents who have been changed and taken over by the evil one and have become trolls. But trolls and ents again come from the same ancestor. There is a connection there. So that makes it a bit more complicated. It's not as if there is one race, the elves, which were created inherently good, and the orcs, which were created inherently evil. The orcs actually are coming from the elves. So that's something just to give a little bit more detail of what's going on. The other thing is, even within each of those races, there is a lot of complexity in how Tolkien uh, looks at them. So, for example, especially when you read something like the Silmarillion, you see that not all elves are good. It's not just a matter of they belong to that race and therefore they are inherently good. You'll see that there's a lot of really bad elves, and they have free will. They choose to do good or they choose to do bad. Some of them end up repenting and changing their mind. Some of them start good and go bad, but uh, Tolkien doesn't see an elf just as an elf being uh, a good being, something that is worthy of honor and respect. It's based on what they choose. The same thing is the case when it comes to the dwarves. We see dwarves again choosing good or choosing bad. There are some dwarves that are worthy of respect and some that are not. Definitely the same thing for humans. We see that in the in Lord of the Rings in particular. It's in the Silmarillion as well to a certain extent, but in Lord of the Rings we have humans fighting on both sides. And again, I can see there where some people would see the racism, because you have people from different nations that seem to be following Sauron, and maybe a suggestion is that the people from that nation are evil, and you kind of get a sense in when we watch Lord of the Rings in the movies that they belong to a different race of humans, but at least a different ethnic group within the humans. But it's not all that clear in the books that they are any different ethnically than that. Definitely there's the Numenorians, which seem to be different in that they have a longer lifespan. But again, they're a mix of good and bad, and in fact they end up going bad, and that's why their island is destroyed. So there's a lot of complexity there. Even the hobbits, we think of the hobbits as being just great. They're just so good. They are the ideal kind of person, and yet we find that in both the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings that there are hobbits that choose good and hobbits that choose bad. And so I don't really see in the writings of J.R.R. Tolkien a sense that certain races are inherently good, some are inherently bad, and I don't see that as a commentary of his own time, seeing certain races of humans as being good and certain races of humans being bad. I think that Tolkien probably saw that people, whatever their ethnic or national background might be, are capable of choosing good or choosing bad, and it's not based on where they are coming from. Those are my thoughts. I'm not a Tolkien scholar, but I am a huge Tolkien fan, and I have taken some time to think about these things. I would love to hear what you have to say about this. Was Tolkien a racist? Make sure to leave a comment in under this video, and take a moment to subscribe as well. Come and visit me at my website at stephenjbedard.com, and I often will blog about Tolkien or C.S. Lewis or other related figures, and you can find all that at my website stephenjbedard.com. Thank you, and God bless.